Greetings, printing ne'er-do-wells. So yesterday I was doing some printing of some smalls for my Amazon drivers. I really appreciate what those guys do for me. And I was printing these small dragons, and if you can see here, the quality of these is terrible. The stringing is awful. Obviously this filament is pretty saturated and we need to dry it out. And here's a close-up of that small dragon. Well, you can really see the stringing and the little goobering. This filament is obviously a little too damp. Now, thinking that perhaps this was just an over-extrusion problem, I ran a calibration cube. And this is that flow calibration cube. The walls are 0.4 millimeters in width. Two walls, obviously. But man, when you look at the side of that, the quality is terrible. You can see it kind of popping and spitting. It almost looks like I have the fuzzy skin setting turned on. Now I should mention too that I live in Phoenix in the desert. So it's fairly dry here. It's not like it's swampland. Check this out. I have a couple different hygrometers up. I have a few different hygrometers around here. I've got one on this printer, 21%. There's another one there showing 21%. This one up here says 22. So unlike a lot of places, it's still fairly dry here. Prior to getting my automated filament joiner, I used to join all of my filament using a soldering iron technique and storing it on large cardboard spools. I've just kept those sitting out in my garage. Obviously that's not a good idea. So I took all of that filament, broke all of the welds, trimmed the ends, ran them all through my Slunaz FF1R filament joiner, and I'll show you that here in a second, and put them on normal spools like this. And because of the quality of that, and I'll give you a close-up of that in a second, I then ran this through my dehydrator, and then overnight I stored it in a vacuum bag here with a desiccant jar. And you can see here we're about at 11% right now. So this stuff is about bone dry. So this morning we're going to rerun those prints and see how the quality changes. And this is my makeshift filament dryer. It's just simply a dehydrator that I found at a thrift store, but this thing works perfectly. Take this out of the inside and you'll see here that a spool fits right onto that center hub there. Pop that rack back on there, put the lid on, and I ran that filament through this last night for about 6 hours. This here's my filament joiner. It's called the Slunaz FF1R, and later today I'm going to be going through all of my other homemade PET filament, cutting all of those welds and putting them on standard spools like this using this, because this makes such awesome welds. They're 4 or 5 millimeters in length and the welds are super strong. And I'm going to be posting some video a little bit more about this later this afternoon likely, showing when I'm joining or rejoining, I guess, all of my other filament and running it through the whole drying process and vacuum packing with desiccant. Now this here is all of the other filament I have made up, the PET filament from plastic bottles, recycled bottles. And I'm gonna have to go through all this, take them off these cardboard spools and put them on normal spools and dry them out. Now you guys may have seen quite some time ago, I explained why I use these large cardboard spools, and it was because of the way the welds were made, that the large hubs on these prevented those welded joints from snapping them when they were wrapped around a spool. All right, well, let's get started. We'll crack open this vacuum bag here, take this homemade PET filament out, hang it on my CR10 over here, and let's do another calibration cube. And I'd be willing to bet that this time it's going to come out much more clean. Follow for part 2.